Welcome to the Authority File. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. My guest for this four-part series is Alan Brill. Alan is Senior Managing Director of Cyber Risk at Kroll, a corporate services firm specializing in valuations, cyber risk, corporate finance, and regulatory compliance, among other services. Alan founded the firm's high-tech investigations practice. He's also a frequent writer, speaker, and instructor on cyber and technology security, and has appeared on a variety of media outlets, including 60 Minutes, Dateline NBC, Good Morning America, and CNN. During this series, sponsored by Springer Nature, Alan and I have been discussing the state of cybersecurity in higher education, particularly the risks facing colleges and universities and their libraries, faculty, students, and administrators. We've also been looking at opportunities for libraries to cooperate with other groups across the campus in a collective defense against digital intruders. In this fourth and final episode, we look at entities such as Sci-Hub and the complicated dance researchers, publishers, and the public do around copyrighted and paywalled information. Finally, Alan, from his perspective as a cybersecurity expert, talks about emerging threats that librarians should be aware of. One of the most pervasive and divisive entities in the world of libraries is a database called Sci-Hub. It essentially pirates copyrighted papers and posts them on a free sharing service. To do so, it harvests credentials from legitimate library users, and sometimes researchers will even share their own credentials and uses them to access the content. I'm wondering if you could talk about this sort of theft and what libraries might be able to do to diminish its impact.
I wish I had a magic solution, but I don't.
Yeah.
It really is a matter of changing behavior based on giving people information that enables them to make the right decision. I had a case a number of years ago in which a student received their doctoral degree from a major institution on the West Coast. They then returned to their home country and became part of a major international corporation's research function. The reason that Kroll got called in was that secret research results were showing up in what you could best think of as the gossip column of a technology publication. And they were really accurate and they were really recent. So we got called in to try to help understand the leak. And we sent a team over to the research facility overseas, and they started showing us this magnificent supercomputer mainframe that they were running and explaining it to us. And one of our people noticed a half size electronics cabinet in the corner. There were a lot of lights flashing in it. And they said, "What's that?" And the people giving the tour said, "That's nothing. That's our email system." And what we discovered was that that recently minted PhD was very proud of the research that they were doing and were emailing their professor, the guy who had been in charge of their doctoral committee, with the breakthroughs. Well, it turned out that that senior level faculty member didn't at that time manage their own email. They had a graduate student doing it, and the graduate student was selling the information. And that turned out to be, the weakest link in the overall chain. And it really is, I think, a process to get people to move from the traditional academic freedom and information should be free to a real world view where information isn't free it's owned. It's owned by copyright holders. It's owned by patent holders. It's owned under the kinds of trade secret protections that are out there. And that what we need to do is rather than saying, let me figure out how to get around these protections by sharing my credentials so that they can be used to harvest non-public material and make it public, we need to get people to understand that there's a reason that things work as they do, and that academic freedom is not unlimited, that there is a reason that patents exist. There is a reason that copyrights exist. There
Hmm.
is a reason why when you're writing a paper for a research journal, it is going to be reviewed and it is going to be embargoed until the publication comes out. And to respect that not as a hindrance of academic freedom, but a driver of research. Research, well, here's the thing that's funny. People keep saying information should be free, but at the same time, they kind of realize that research costs money and it's not free. And to think that everything that comes from it should be made available to anyone at any time for any reason is kind of doublethink. You're trying to say, well, I want them to spend the money to do it, but I don't want them to have the results. And that's not productive. So I
Hmm.
think one of the things that a librarian can do is to use their position and use the rules of the library to help people make that distinction. That, yes, we have services that we pay for that we can give you access to, but that doesn't mean that you have a license to give it to anybody that you feel like or to publish it or let somebody else publish it. And we're going to enforce that.
Right.
So if you're the one who's giving the credentials that are being used to steal the data, that is going to have consequences for you. And it may be that your credential was stolen, and we can certainly deal with that. But if you're voluntarily giving your credentials to somebody who is misusing them, I'm afraid that's on you.
Hmm. Right. It sounds like whether it's in the case of the PhD student who is just proud of his or her accomplishments and wanting to share them, or some other ideological bent folks have regarding copyright. The idea of information security or even network security transcends all of that. I mean, you have to protect your information system. You can't. There's only one way to do it. You can't do it halfway because so and so wants to share this or so and so wants to share that, and um, it's either a lockdown or it's not. Is basically what I'm getting at. So,
No, Bill, you're absolutely right. I've had students who complain that when I grade their final paper, it takes a certain amount of time until that grade makes it into the school's official records. And, you know, the answer is, look, we don't want a whole bunch of individual faculty members posting to directly to the official record. And we sure don't want the students having the ability to post their grades to the official records. Because while we believe that most students would do it honestly, we're kind of realists. And,
mm,
there may end up with fewer C's and D's and F's in the official grade than we gave. So you're right. This is not something you can just think of when it goes bad, it has really become a central focus, not just for libraries, but for universities as a whole, and even beyond a university system where
Hmm.
you have multiple campuses sharing network resources so that a problem that starts in one campus can expand to an entire state that motivates doing it right. And to do it right, as the old saying goes, you got to do it. And that's where I think librarians can be of tremendous help because in their work, they may see reports of breaches and maybe they can collect those and pass them around the university in some form of newsletter so that you're not totally surprised at the kinds of attacks that are occurring. The more knowledge that we can put out there, the more we're giving people the ammunition to defend and to detect and to report. And those are the keys to having a cybersecurity program, which is more than just aspirational. It's wonderful to have a set of rules that, if you carried them out, would give you good cybersecurity. But if you're not actually carrying them out, they're aspirational, they're good wishes, and that doesn't make a program. And that's also where a university's compliance organization comes in. They can look at how things are really working and help to assure that the controls that you believe are in place and that are supposed to be in place are actually working.
Right. So I'm really interested to hear from your perspective at Kroll, what might the emerging threats or some of the things happening in now in cybersecurity that librarians or universities or anyone really should be aware of?
We literally process hundreds and hundreds, actually thousands of cases a year. Our team is made up of experts in cybersecurity and in cyber forensics. Many come from organizations like the FBI and Secret Service's cyber divisions. They're
Hmm.
expert investigators and they know how to deal with the data. And they can take apart a case and find out what happened. How did they get into the network? Did they steal data? We're seeing right now, Bill, in more than half of the ransomware cases, that before the bad guys encrypt your data and then ask you for the ransom, they're stealing your data. They're exfiltrating your data. And if you don't pay the ransom, they then threaten to release that data. And some of the ransomware gangs are actually running what we call shaming sites, where they publish your data if you didn't pay. And unfortunately, we're also seeing cases where data gets released even if you do pay.
Hmm.
Um, because the thing to always remember is you're dealing with criminals. And while they may have a business reason for acting like a real organization, they're carrying out serious criminal violations. And they're not totally motivated other than for reputational reasons to get the next person to pay to follow the rules. So what you want to do is detect, you want to prevent to the extent that you can. But I think the most important thing to do is to say there is no such thing as 100% protection. We could be hit tomorrow with a 0-day attack that nobody even knew was possible. What we need is a pre planned incident response program that brings together senior management, the general counsel, IT security, HR, compliance, libraries, healthcare, if you have a healthcare operation as part of the university, so that when it happens, and I think the only rational position today is don't think in terms of if, think in terms of when it happens, you're going to know what to do and you're going to be able to practice. We work with an awful lot of organizations every year to run what we call tabletop exercises, where we bring everybody together for a day or two and we run scenarios and we see how prepared people are. And we also do things like saying, well, if you're the chief librarian and you're the official member of the incident response team, when you show up to walk into the room where the exercise is going to happen, we're going to tap you on the shoulder and say, come on over here. You're on vacation. You can't be reached. And now we're going to go look for your deputy. And does that person even know that they're the deputy? Have they ever practiced? Have they ever been part of an exercise? We're really thinking more and more on the relationship between cybersecurity and cyber resilience.
Hmm.
And I think to the extent that you can get the word out among your staff on how important this is, on how it's everybody's duty to be a part of it, that you can increase the resilience, at least for the parts of the operation that you're responsible for. And if you can do that, if you can make people understand that the rules are there to protect everyone, and that going around the rules because somebody gets you on the phone and is giving you a sob story may be true, but it also may be part of a scheme. And having their backs so that doing the right thing becomes the right thing to do, that I think is central to the evolving role of the librarian and the library in information security.
Excellent. Okay, well, Alan Brill, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. I hope it was helpful to the listeners.
You just heard from Alan Brill. Alan is Senior Managing Director of Cyber Risk at Kroll, a corporate services firm specializing in valuations, cyber risk, corporate finance, and regulatory compliance, among other services. Alan founded the firm's high-tech investigations practice. This episode is sponsored by Springer Nature. If you like what you hear, rate us or give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced by Choice's senior digital media producer, Mark Dirks, and digital media assistant, Sabrina Cofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.